Everybody get up, no need to cram now. We got a real jam going down, going down, going down, going down, going down, going down. Welcome to the IntelliJAMS.
I am super excited for today's guest because his content has been all over my LinkedIn recently, and it's the reason I reached out to him. I've got Tim Davidson, who is the founder of Clean Commit, joining me today. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So, as I was saying, love your content. You've been talking about a lot of great stuff, but one topic has really been standing out to me. And the other day on LinkedIn, you were talking about this concept of terminal testing velocity. And I'm not going to kind of explain it any further than I think this is really interesting and something that the audience would be into. And you and I have kind of spoken before about maybe there's some disagreement on this topic between us, but I want you to explain that concept for our listeners, and then maybe we can dig into pros, cons, who's this applicable to, who's this not applicable to. But terminal testing velocity, what is it? Why should people care?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yeah, I saw the episode where you and Adam were talking about how many tests you should run, and it's a pretty common question that comes up. And I think you guys said, don't run too many, run the right tests. And I think that is the wrong answer. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but for me, that's the wrong answer. So so I work with a handful of clients, and we work on a performance basis. So our mission is to get as many wins for those guys as possible, because that's how we get paid. So we need to run as many experiments as we can without running junk experiments, which is where this concept of terminal test velocity came from. So every site has a bucket of testing potential that they can do over a period of time. And our philosophy is you should squeeze as many tests into that bucket as possible. Because when you start, for us, when we start an engagement, we don't have a good picture of what is going to work. And this is the core principle behind running as many tests as you can. So it takes us a while to figure out what tests are going to resonate with people. And I've run tests where I'm this is absolutely going to knock everything out of the park. I've used this site, this part sucks, there's a ton of friction, and then we go and fix it, and the test fails. And I'm that's, I spent so long on this, I was so confident. So if you run more tests, you get past that barrier quickly. But the actual terminal testing velocity means that you're running tests on your homepage, your PDP, your collection page, any landing pages. In IntelliGEMS, you can do price testing and shipping testing at the same time. So depending on how many of those variables you've worked on, you should be trying to, well, in our case, trying to run all of those tests at the same time. So the goal for us with our clients is to run 200 tests a year, which when I've sprouted that number online, people are that's insane. That's when you break it down, it's almost 20 tests a month is crazy, because you have to go through the design and the development and kind of make sure they're sitting in the right way. So that's the principle behind it. And there are kind of some gotchas and some processes that you need to get right, because you can't just do that many tests. There's caveats to how it works.
Yeah. And when you were saying, hey, I listened to your episode and you said not to do that, I think we're actually semi-aligned on that you just don't want junk. And if you can find enough things to test and you can do enough of it without getting into the junk, then it's good practice. And you said there hey, this terminal testing velocity is about you have this bucket, and how do I fill that bucket to the max? Is that bucket, from your perspective, those places that you talked about? Is it hey, you have these surfaces and that's what makes up the bucket? Or is the bucket something beyond those surfaces to test in?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the bucket is defined by how many conversions you're seeing and where people are going on your site. So for a big site that's seeing, let's say, 500,000 people a month, you have a ton of surface. You can run tests on peripheral pages, some of your small landing pages, because people are going to those pages and then they're going to convert, which is the thing that helps you reach statistical significance. But for like a smaller site, if you're only seeing 10,000, 20,000 views a month, then your your surface is much smaller because you're probably going to need your tests to be running for like 4 to 6 weeks for them to complete. So that's the definition, but that's more like the length of the test. Where you can stack tests is the pages that I mentioned. And this is kind of like, not to hammer on about Intelligems specifically, but this is one of the reasons why we lead our clients to Intelligems, because the way that the model is set up, it means that if you're running on-site edits, you can do multiple of those tests and have them running in parallel, which is like, when I mention this to brands, they get a little bit cautious, because there's this tale that floats around on the web that you can't have people in more than one test at the same time on one page without them interacting with each other and like throwing things off. But in 2023, Microsoft did this like absolutely massive study. And I think they did like tens of thousands of entries into their study to see the effect when you have someone go through 2 tests on the same page or multiple tests on the same page at the same time. It's called A/B test interactions, a call to relax. And the bottom line is that there's like a really, really small interaction rate between the tests on a page, unless they're like kind of overlapping or nested. So I think it was like 0.002% interference rate. And that's kind of the secret behind how we do lots of tests at the same time. And even if you are a smaller brand and you don't have a ton of traffic, if you can plot out on your page, like, I want to do a test in the hero, I want to do a test in the middle of the page, I want to do a test in the footer, then you can run those tests at the same time without them interfering. And that's kind of how you can get your velocity up.
And I'll get a link to that study so that we can put it into the show notes if people want to go dig into it as well. And like this was going to be my follow-up question. Like, how do you deal with all of like the interaction effects that are happening inside of there? So is the idea like you stay in different areas of the page, like for a smaller brand who needs to keep all of this testing scope to like less breadth because there's less interactions happening? It's like, hey, I can start to segment this by hero versus mid versus somewhere else. But when you're talking about like all those additional surface areas, is the idea that like, hey, I can be running experiments, I can be running tests in these different places, because if I'm running something on a home, like we talk a lot about this at IntelliGEMS actually, is like I can run a home experiment at the same time as I'm running like a post-purchase experiment, because like those two things don't matter against each other. Like even if there was interaction effects, like what I said on the homepage versus what I present on the upsell shouldn't play too much of a role in interfering with one another.
Yeah, that's right. Like you can, someone going through a test on the homepage can see the same test. They can see like 5, 10 other tests, and it's not going to impact. Whoop, I think I'm frozen. Sorry, that might be my connection. Yeah, they can go through multiple tests and it's not going to affect them. I think the tricky part is planning out how you run tests on a single page. So there's like a few test types that you can set up. One is the on-site edits I mentioned. And that's like JavaScript and CSS, and you can run tons of those. They can stack. Theme tests or template tests, you can stack them, but every time you add one on, it splits the amount of traffic that's going to them. So you dilute the traffic, and eventually you just get to the point where you can't run, like unless you're a massive site,
Yeah,
you don't want to be doing that because it slows everything down.
Yeah, I like that. So like you got the theme, you got the redirect, you can reduce the amount of overlap that you're having inside of there. What do you think, like, so at the beginning of this, I was like, what is this? What are the pros? What are the cons? So it sounds like from a pro perspective, like you're going to get more swings. And when you get more swings, you're going to be able to find more wins, but even on top of finding more wins, just like find more opportunity. Because like, I think like if you run enough tests, you're going to find a test that you ask a question that gives you 5 more questions. And if you do this in this way, those 5 new questions become rapid tests and experimentations on the other end as well. So like, is the other win of this kind of just like, as you push for velocity, you just kind of get into this habit of, well, the test becomes the test, which is just like consistent learning?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, excuse me. So I said like early on that when we work with a new brand, we just don't know what's going on. Like we do tons of analysis. Like we go and dig into customer research and build a psychographical profile of these people and stuff. And we do everything you can possibly do to learn about who they are. But the best way to find answers about a customer base is to run tests and then just see what happens. And for us, it takes like a couple of months to really get an understanding of which tests are going to resonate. And like a good example of this, I'll come back to your question. I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but a
Let's do it.
good example of this is we work with a sports protection brand. Like they build a product that helps athletes who play contact sport. And like we'd removed all of the friction from their website, and it wasn't until we did like this deep psychographical analysis and then ran through a series of tests that we were like, oh man, these guys are like, the customers are super neurotic. Like they care a lot about the data and how this brand has been positioned in terms of like the research. And then all we did was this one small change of putting some university logos in the right spot, and the conversion rate on the homepage went up by about 23%. And we wouldn't have got there without doing a lot of tests. Like there's kind of no answer to finding this out without just running tests. So if you can run more tests, then you can get those answers quicker. And like for anyone for any program that's being honest with itself and running a lot of tests, your win rate is going to be like 20% or thereabouts, 20, 30 at the most if you're doing really well and you're running your tests with like actual rigor. So if you put that in perspective, if you're only doing like 5 tests a month, then, you know, the rate of wins is going to be quite low. If you can double that or triple that, then if it's adding money to the bank, then velocity is one of those levers that you can pull and it ends up, landing more dollars in the bank account.
I really like this concept of like just continuous learning, and like you don't know what you don't know. So this is like the best counter to like when we started this, and you're like, hey, I listened to that episode where I was like, hey, think through and like build a hypothesis and like make sure you're not testing junk. And my kind of argument in that episode was like, hey, you have all this information about your site, you have all this information about your customers, like go read into that to build a strong hypothesis. And basically what you're arguing here is like, well, Alex, you could sit down and look at all that and like build a strong hypothesis, or you could just get to the drawing board and like test some of it. And like, you don't need to be as buttoned up as I was saying, because if I run 10 versions of it, I'm probably going to find it faster than I was when I was like looking through what should I go test.
Yeah, totally. That's pretty much it. The other thing, which I just remembered from your last question, because I went on my own little tangent, you were asking about like how you get to more experiment ideas, which is, I think, one of the things that it's kind of one of those barriers that a lot of teams bump into when they've been running their program for a while and they're like, now we're just moving buttons around and like I've kind of run out of the meaningful ideas. The way that we handle that problem is for every experiment that finishes up, I have like I used to do this manually, but now Claude helps me do it. But I've got a skill I run where Claude goes and analyzes the metrics. So we pull the metrics out of the Intelligems API. We have a conversation. I jump into Clarity or whatever heat mapping tool, and then like look at what's happened. And it recommends like a few avenues. It's either like ditch the idea because it sucked, which happens quite a bit. It's like pivot and do something different, or it's I can't remember what the third one is, but there's a third branch. And out of that, it usually gives me like 3 or 4 ideas on things that I can go and do. Sometimes they're not great because Claude is like, you know, it's only doing what it doesn't get that creative, but at least gives a foundation for like some ideas. So once we get moving, if we start with 50 tests, by the time I've done all the retrospectives, it's like 75 ideas and then 100 ideas and then 200 ideas. And like some of them aren't going to be great, but it's a good way to umbrella out and like have your learning drive the bucket of ideas for the next set of experiments.
Do you ever find yourself with this strategy going back and like retesting previous winners as well, like over time, because like you're testing so many things? Like, do you ever go back and retest something and be like, is this still a winner?
Yeah, not super frequently. It's one of those things that our clients have been a bit hesitant about in working with us, because some of them have worked with AB, but like with CRO agencies in the past, and they come in, they're like, you guys aren't just going to retest the same stuff and like charge us for things that have already won. Excuse me. So we have a system where we kind of tag everything based on the page and the intent of the test. So we try not to overlap, but there's often times when we're almost testing the same thing. We'll test like, so yes and no. I've kind of said no, but the answer is kind of yes as well. It's like we'll do so many tests on the mini cart, or like the parts of the process that are closer to the money, because that's where the big wins are.
Yep.
So sometimes those tests are really similar, but they're like intentionally they're a bit different. But yeah, if we lock in a winner, we have other metrics or other processes to make sure that the data is accurate and that like the testing foundation is still cool.
All right. So terminal testing velocity, basically the concept is how much can I possibly test at once and over time? We want to maximize for the number of tests that are running. We talked through a few of the pros. You're going to quickly create a testing culture because like you're constantly doing it. And the idea is that if I test a lot of things, I'm going to find paths through to the money. Test this, and it's just going to directionally move me to where I need to be going. For the naysayers on this, Tim, like what are some of the realistic downsides of approaching experimentation and testing this way?
Yeah. So firstly, it's consuming. Like even for us, where we have a dedicated team where all of our processes are like revolve around moving fast, there's a ton of overhead that goes into it. So there's communication between different teams. If you have separate designers, developers, copywriters, people who have to QA the results and make sure there's no bugs being introduced. That's probably the biggest bottleneck for us is communication. So sometimes I feel a little bit bad for like the project manager on the other side of the fence, because every week I'm like, hey, here's 10 new tests. Can you go and like have a look at these and hurry up? So that's one part. The other part is that it becomes a bit of an administrative challenge, because you do need to make sure that you don't retest things. There's no overlap. You need to have enough understanding of how the tests work to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So I think that's not so much a downside, but more like a challenge. I don't think there's really any downside. It's like, I guess the question would be like, if you're running paid ads, what's the downside of quadrupling your budget and running more tests? It's like, there's probably no downside. You might waste a bunch of money. It costs you more effort. But if you can get there, even if you're not trying to run 200 experiments a year like we are, even if you double or triple your velocity, then there'll be challenges. But the pros are that whatever goal you're shooting for with CRO, you're probably going to get there quicker.
I love it. And I came into this saying like, hey, we're probably going to disagree on some things. I think we're actually just aligned and just like, I'm down to use either approach. Like my general philosophy is like, I want to go find wins, and I want to do it in a way where we're being intentional, and you're being intentional with speed. And like, I love that. And it's just like, how do we stop it from being a bunch of junk tests? And I think that's what, at the beginning of this, when you said like, hey, some people are fearful of this. And I think like brand side, the fear would come from, but like, how can you possibly do that many things? Like, it's just going to be a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter. And it's like, we're staying busy to stay busy. No, if you do this and you approach this the right way, the tests are going to inform the next test. And like everyone is giving you a micro learning that is going to push you in the right direction. And like on the macro, you got to that spot faster with a bunch of micro decisions and a bunch of micro tests. Yeah,
exactly. But I can say something else if you want to disagree about other things. Like I can find something to disagree with you on if you want.
We should get you back on the show to disagree about something, or maybe we put together some form of webinar or something where we get people to argue speed and we get people to argue I don't know what's the opposite. I don't want to say slow, but like methodical versus speed. I don't know. Yeah. We'll probably do something like that in the future. But Tim, before I let you go, something I ask everyone before they leave the show: where can people find more Tim? where can they subscribe to you, get your content, and then as a user of Intelligems, best thing about Intelligems for someone listening?
Yeah, so you can find me over at cleancommit.io. I spend a fair bit of time writing content. I'm about to move into recording myself the sultry Australian tones on YouTube, but for now, I've got a newsletter and a ton of lead magnets and like resources that you can pick up on my website that I've built over the last couple of years. Some of them are pretty sweet. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so if you can stand the platform, then you can go and see me talking about stuff over there. The best thing about Intelligems that there's a couple of good things, but we've been partners with pretty much all of the A/B testing platforms over the years, like inside and outside of the Shopify ecosystem. But Intelligems is probably the most active in releasing new features, like because we're an affiliate and closely tied to the team on your side. We see pretty much every week there's a new feature release. So when we talk about Intelligems as a platform on the whole, we say that it's the most mature. And for us, it's the one that we choose because we can move the fastest with it. So there's actually no other, and I'm not going to cast shade on the other platforms because we're partners with those guys as well. But there's no other Shopify A/B testing tool that you can do our approach with. You can't run 200 experiments per year unless you have a huge amount of traffic with any platform except Intelligems. So that's why we choose it.
Love it. And you should definitely follow Tim on LinkedIn. I will get his LinkedIn as well as some of his best lead magnets into the show notes so that you guys can go find it. Tim is a great follow on LinkedIn, despite him saying that you got to be able to stand the platform. It's worth it to go get more of Tim. All right, Tim, thanks for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Nice. Thanks for letting me talk at you for 20 minutes, Alex. There's not too many people who give me that opportunity.